if you're, you know, a pop figure, you know what I mean, like in this world.
Like Marilyn Manson, who you're doing, Jessica Simpson, and Sarah Palin, I guess she's. But you can see why, if you do Sarah Palin, people might think, oh, he wants to make a statement about Sarah Palin or American politics.
I want to nail her, but.
If anyone's gonna, I think you got a good chance.
Imagine two rap titans, brothers under Dr. Dre, suddenly at war. Snoop Dogg blasts Eminem's legacy on air, claiming he could live without his music, sparking a cold war that had fans ready for blood. This wasn't just a disagreement, it was a seismic shift in hip-hop's power structure, a betrayal between men who once shared stages, tours, and even a label's DNA. The feud began quietly, almost accidentally, in July 2020, when Snoop sat down with the Breakfast Club and dropped a bombshell. Eminem, the man Dre himself had molded into a global phenomenon, didn't make his top 10 rappers list. Not just that, he dismissed M's entire catalog as something he could live without. The words hung in the air like a challenge, and the internet exploded. How could Snoop, a man who'd collaborated with M, who'd toured alongside him, suddenly act like his music was disposable?
And he was gang related, so it was like our first meeting was on bad terms because we were still gang affiliated and we were using gang terminology on the introduction.
We can see the contradiction clearly now. Snoop didn't just question Eminem's skill, he credited Dr. Dre for his success, framing M as a product of Dre's genius rather than a self-made lyrical force. He name-checked 80s legends like Rakim and Ice Cube, implying M couldn't touch their greatness. Yet in the same breath, he claimed love and respect for the Detroit rapper. The mixed signals were deafening. Fans scrambled to make sense of it. Was this a calculated diss? A misfired joke? Or something deeper, a simmering resentment finally boiling over? Eminem, a man who'd built his career on precision and control, wasn't about to let that slide. By December 2020, he fired back on Zeus, a track from the deluxe edition of Music to Be, flipping dog to God in a subliminal jab that cut deep. "Man, dog, you was like a damn god to me," he rapped before twisting the knife. Nah, not really. The message was clear. Snoop's words hadn't just stung, they'd shattered an illusion.
Eminem doubles down, and I say double down because Eminem has kind of sent shots at Diddy before, but on this, he really doubles down on...
What made this feud so explosive wasn't just the public shots fired, but the history behind them. These weren't random rappers trading barbs. They were two of Dre's most iconic protégés, men who'd been linked for decades. Their collaboration wasn't just a track, it was a statement of unity, a moment where West Coast and Midwest rap fused under Dre's production. So when Snoop dismissed M's legacy, it wasn't just a hot take, it felt like a betrayal. And Eminem, a man who'd spent his career proving himself in a genre that once doubted white rappers, wasn't about to let that stand. The subliminal diss on Zeus wasn't just a clapback, it was a declaration that the gloves were off. Fans dissected every line, every Instagram post, every cryptic interview, waiting for the next move. Snoop, ever the strategist, hinted at a response, posting on social media that M should pray he didn't answer. The tension was palpable, the stakes higher than ever. But here's where the story takes a darker turn. Because this wasn't just about rap egos, it was about history, about unsolved mysteries, about the shadows that still loom over hip-hop's golden era. Snoop's comments didn't just target Eminem, they echoed a pattern of dismissals, of rewriting legacies. And M, a man known for his lyrical precision, didn't just fire back at Snoop. He started dropping hints about deeper truths, about Shakur's passing, about Diddy's alleged involvement, about the powerful figures who'd shaped hip-hop's darkest chapters. Suddenly, this feud wasn't just about two rappers, it was about the untold stories lurking beneath the surface. The questions piled up. Was Snoop's diss really about M's skills, or was it a distraction from something bigger? Was Eminem's response a personal clapback, or a coded message about who really pulled the strings in hip-hop's most infamous tragedies?
He doesn't care what, the new generation thinks of him. He doesn't care what, what he says offends people. It's classic.
We know how this plays out in the rap world. Beefs escalate, diss tracks drop, and the culture feeds on the drama. But this time, the stakes felt different. Because Snoop Dogg isn't just a rapper. He's a man with ties to Death Row, to Suge Knight, to the very era when Shakur was gunned down in Las Vegas. And Eminem? He's the man who spent years weaving those unsolved mysteries into his lyrics, dropping hints about Diddy, about Keefe D, about the forces that shaped hip-hop's bloodiest moments. So when he rapped, "I ain't trying to beef with him, cause he might put a hit on me like Keefe D did," it wasn't just a punchline, it was a warning. A reminder that in hip-hop, some feuds aren't just about pride, they're about survival.
Up something. You're gonna establish yourself as a businessman. That I wasn't taught on Death Row Records. All my cars was in Suge Knight name.
The timeline here is crucial, because while Snoop and M were trading shots in 2020, The world was also watching as Keefe D, the man long suspected in Shakur's passing, was finally charged. As Suge Knight, from his prison cell, started dropping hints about Snoop's alleged role in Shakur's demise. As Diddy's name resurfaced in lawsuits, in hotel footage, in whispers about bombs and threats. Eminem's lyrics suddenly didn't seem like random disses. They seemed like pieces of a puzzle. And Snoop's silence on those topics? It spoke volumes. Was this feud really about a top 10 list? Or was it about the secrets that still haunt hip-hop's past? Then came the twist no one saw coming. Just as the beef reached its peak, just as fans braced for an all-out lyrical war, the two men quietly buried the hatchet. No grand apology tour, no press conference, just a private phone call, a new track, and a return to the stage together at the Super Bowl halftime show. The reconciliation was so smooth, so seamless, that it left fans wondering, what really happened behind the scenes? Did Dre's health scare force them to put aside their differences? Or was there something else, something bigger, that made them realize this feud wasn't worth the cost? Because in hip-hop, when legends like Snoop and M decide to stand down, it's never just about the music. It's about the stories they're not telling.
How long did it take, do you think, before you got good enough to think, okay, this is working now? How many times did you have bad on-stage experiences?
Maybe a couple.
So not
I'm
that
pretty
many.
awesome.
And that's where things get interesting. Because while the public saw a squashed beef, insiders whisper about the conversations that never made it to the press, about the things Snoop and M discussed in private, the things they agreed to leave unsaid, about the way Eminem's latest album, The Death of Slim Shady, didn't just target Diddy. It circled back to the same themes, the same unsolved mysteries, the same names that keep surfacing in hip-hop's darkest chapters. The question isn't just about why they fought, or even why they made up. It's about what they know, about the truths that still lurk in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered. Because if there's one thing we've learned from hip-hop's history, it's that the biggest feuds aren't just about ego. They're about power, about control, about the stories that get written, and the ones that get buried. And when two legends like Snoop and M decide to end a war before it really begins, we can't help but ask, what did they see coming that the rest of us didn't? The answers might be hidden in the lyrics, in the interviews, in the quiet conversations no one was meant to hear. But one thing's for sure, this story isn't over, not by a long shot. Because in hip-hop, the past never stays buried. And the men who know the truth, they're still talking, just not to us. Not yet.
She stepped up as my wife and handled that. And there's been many times where I've been at my lowest, and she's always been the strongest to get me back up to like, get back out there. You gotta get back out there and do what you do. Don't worry about what's happening over here. I'm gonna handle that.
The turning point came in January 2021, when Dr. Dre suffered a brain aneurysm that sent shockwaves through the hip-hop world. As the man who'd shaped both Snoop and Eminem's careers fought for his life in intensive care, something shifted between the two rappers. Sources close to the situation reveal that private phone calls were made, apologies exchanged, egos set aside. Snoop himself later admitted on Rolling Stone Music Now that he reached out to Eminem with a simple message: "I was wrong, bro. Do you forgive me?" The reconciliation seemed genuine, even heartfelt. But here's the thing. It also felt rushed, too convenient, too neat. Because if we look at the timeline, Eminem had just spent months publicly dissecting why Snoop's comments stung so deeply, calling that final dig, "music I can live without," flat out disrespectful. So why the sudden change of heart? Was it really about Dre's health? Or was there another reason these two needed to bury the hatchet fast? Insiders suggest the feud wasn't just about a top 10 list or a misfired diss track. The real tension traces back to a collapsed collaboration, a feature request that went horribly wrong. Eminem later revealed on Shade 45 that Snoop had wanted him on a track, but the message got twisted in translation. Instead of a simple, "let's hear the beat first," Snoop's team allegedly took it as a flat-out rejection, sparking resentment. "He thought that meant I didn't fuck with him," Eminem explained. Case closed? Not quite. Because if this was just a misunderstanding, why did the bad blood linger for months? Why did Eminem drop not one, but multiple subliminal shots on Music to Be, including that Zeus verse where he flipped God to dog like a verbal knife twist? And why, even after the apology, did the energy between them still feel off? Then came Eminem's 2024 album, The Death of Slim Shady, and suddenly, the feud's ghost resurfaced in the most chilling way possible. The track Antichrist didn't just diss Diddy, it spelled out R-A-P-E-R, while leaving out a P, a move so deliberate, it felt like a coded message. Next, Ask Me is getting his beat worse than Diddy did, M rapped, before dropping a line about, "she probably ran out the room with his d***o." The reference was unmistakable. The 2016 hotel footage of Diddy assaulting Cassie Ventura, a scandal that had just resurfaced in lawsuits and federal raids. But here's where it gets wilder. Because Eminem didn't stop there. On Fuel, he rapped about "Rest in peace, Biggie, and Shakur, both of y'all should be living." Then dropped the bomb. "He might put a hit on me like Keefe D did." Keefe D, the man charged with orchestrating Shakur's 1996 passing. The same Keefe D whose nephew, Orlando Anderson, was in the car that night. The same Keefe D who, for decades, walked free while Suge Knight and Snoop Dogg built empires off Shakur's legacy.
D, where I'm going with this, Snoop, stop letting these people use you, man.
Now, let's connect the dots, because Suge Knight, from his prison cell, has been loud about one thing. Snoop Dogg has a lot of explaining to do about that night in Vegas. On his Collect Call podcast, Suge didn't just hint, he demanded a face-to-face with Snoop, saying, "If it's true what they say, there's gonna be a lot of explaining." What exactly did Suge mean? Well, for starters, there's the claim that Snoop told Daz Dillinger something's gonna happen in Vegas, warning him to stay away. There's the fact that Snoop, despite being Shakur's brother, allegedly never visited him in the hospital after the shooting, only showing up after Shakur was already gone. And there's the Hit 'em Up controversy, where Snoop admitted he hated the diss track Shakur made against Biggie, calling it buying problems in interviews. Which raises the question, if Snoop was so against the East Coast-West Coast war, why did he allegedly distance himself from Shakur in his final days? Was it fear, guilt, or something far darker? Here's where Eminem's lyrics start to feel like a blueprint. Because if we listen closely, he's not just dissing Diddy, he's mapping a network. "The fucking bomb with the puffy on," he raps on Bad One, a clear nod to Cassie Ventura's lawsuit alleging Diddy threatened to blow up Kid Cudi's car after learning Cudi was romantically linked to her. But why bring Snoop into this? Because Snoop and Diddy have a history, a complicated one. After Shakur's passing, Snoop publicly reconciled with Biggie and Puff, even calling them friends in interviews. Meanwhile, Eminem's bars suggest Diddy's circle is still dangerous. "He might put a hit on me like Keefe D did." So let's ask the obvious. If Snoop knew something about Shakur's passing, if he suspected Diddy's involvement, would he really risk reigniting that war? Or was the feud with Eminem a smokescreen, a way to keep the focus anywhere but on the questions that still haunt death row?
It's only happening in Long Beach right now as far as me doing something for the community, because that's where my heart lies at as far as straightening out my own neighborhood before I go elsewhere.
And then, in 2022, Snoop made his biggest power move yet. He bought Death Row Records, the label Shakur bled for, the empire Suge built on blood and betrayal, the catalog that holds All Eyes on Me, the album Shakur recorded while Snoop was allegedly pulling away. On the surface, it looked like a triumph, a legend reclaiming his roots. But insiders whisper it was something else: control. Because if you own the vault, you control the narrative. You decide what gets released, what stays buried. You silence the questions. And Snoop, the man who once called Shakur his brother, the man who fainted in his hospital room, the man who now runs the label Shakur passed away for, hasn't answered Suge's demands for that explanation. Instead, he's reunited with Eminem on stages like the Super Bowl, smiling for the cameras, acting like the past is ancient history. Psychologists who study the dynamics of hip-hop's tight-knit, family-like structures have long noted how its biggest feuds aren't just about ego, they're about survival. The rap game thrives on hierarchy, on the unspoken rule that respect is earned through dominance. And when Snoop Dogg dismissed Eminem's legacy in that 2020 interview, it wasn't just a critique, it was a demotion. For a man like M, who spent his entire career fighting to be taken seriously in a genre that initially wrote him off as a novelty, that kind of public dismissal wasn't just an insult, it was an existential threat. And Snoop, a man who'd spent decades as the cool, unshakable face of West Coast rap, may have been projecting his own insecurities onto the one artist who'd outlasted him in mainstream relevance. Because, let's be real, while Snoop branched into business ventures, TV shows, and even a wellness empire, Eminem remained the rap titan who could still move the needle with a single verse. Was Snoop's diss really about M's skills? Or was it about a legend watching his cultural footprint shrink while his former protege's star refused to dim?
When you get to be the age that we at and you get to become as successful as we are, you have to start doing some things that matter for the future.
The timing of the feud's resolution tells us even more. Dr. Dre's brain aneurysm in 2021 didn't just scare Snoop and M into making up. It forced them to confront a harsh truth. Their rivalry was making them look weak in a game that rewards strength. But here's the twist. Eminem's subsequent lyrics on The Death of Slim Shady suggest he didn't just walk away from the fight, he weaponized it. By dropping bars about Diddy's alleged violence and Shakur's passing, M wasn't just dissing Snoop's associates, he was sending a message. I know things. And in hip-hop, knowledge is power. Psychologically, this wasn't just a clapback, it was a negotiation. A way to force respect by proving he held cards no one else dared to play. The question is, did Snoop back down because he genuinely wanted peace? Or because he knew Eminem was willing to go further than anyone expected? Then there's the money. Because in the end, hip-hop isn't just about pride, it's about profits. The moment Snoop and M squashed their beef, the collaborations started rolling in. From the D to the LBC, their 2022 track wasn't just a reunion, it was a statement. A way to remind the world that these two were still a force when united. But insiders claim the real motivation wasn't artistic, it was financial. With Dr. Dre's empire still a major player in the industry, and both Snoop and M tied to his legacy, a prolonged feud would have meant missed opportunities, lost revenue, and a weakened brand. The Super Bowl performance? That wasn't just a show, it was a business move. A way to remind the world that, despite the drama, they were still the kings of rap's golden era. But here's the catch. If this was all about money, why did Eminem stop dropping hints about Shakur's passing? Why did the disses against Diddy suddenly disappear from his lyrics? Was it because the checks cleared? Or because someone convinced him the truth was bad for business?
I did 3 albums with Master P.
3 albums?
Yeah, when I left Death Row Records, I signed with No Limit Records, which was the hottest rap label in the...
The financial angle gets even murkier when you consider Snoop's purchase of Death Row Records. Owning the label wasn't just a nostalgic power play, it was a strategic one. With control over Shakur's unreleased material, Snoop didn't just gain access to music, he gained control over legacies. And in an industry where catalogs are worth millions, that's leverage. But if Snoop was really concerned about preserving Shakur's memory, why hasn't he addressed Suge Knight's allegations? Why hasn't he clarified his own role in the events leading up to that fateful night in Vegas? The silence speaks volumes. Because in hip-hop, when the money's right, even the deepest grudges can be buried. But the past? That's a different story. The past has a way of resurfacing, especially when the people involved still have something to hide.
You know, people are gonna pass judgment. They're gonna say what they wanna say, and they're gonna make their own conclusions or whatever.
And that brings us back to Eminem's sudden quiet. Because if this was all about business, if the feud was just a temporary glitch in a long-term partnership, then why does it feel like we're still missing pieces of the puzzle? Eminem didn't just stop dissing Snoop, he stopped talking about the things that mattered most. No more references to Diddy's alleged crimes, no more hints about Keefe D, no more bars that could actually shake the foundations of hip-hop's darkest secrets. Was it because the money was too good, or because the truth was too dangerous? Because if Eminem really knows something about Shakur's passing, if he's sitting on information that could rewrite history, then his silence isn't just a truce, it's a negotiation. And in a game where power is everything, the real question isn't whether Snoop and M made up, it's what they're still not telling us. But here's what we can't ignore. Eminem's silence since then. No more diss tracks, no more cryptic bars about Diddy or Keefe D or the bomb with the puffy on. Just peace. Too perfect, too clean. Because if Eminem really believed Snoop had ties to Shakur's passing, if he really thought Diddy's circle was still a threat, would he really let it go? Or is this truce just another layer of the game? A way to keep the real secrets locked where they've always been? Because let's be real, in hip-hop, the loudest battles aren't the ones fought in songs. They're the ones never spoken aloud. So we're left with this. 2 legends standing side by side on the world's biggest stage, all smiles, all brotherhood, all water under the bridge. But the questions linger, the lyrics echo, the podcasts hint. And Suge Knight, from his cell, is still waiting for that conversation. So tell us, when Snoop and Eminem hug it out under the Super Bowl lights, are we watching the end of a feud or the beginning of a cover-up? Because in hip-hop, the past doesn't just haunt you, it defines you. And if these two know more than they're saying, then the Cold War never ended. It just went underground. Now, we want to hear from you. Do you think Eminem's disses were just clapbacks or a warning? Did Snoop buy Death Row to honor Shakur's legacy or to bury the truth? Drop your theories in the comments, because this story isn't over, not by a long shot. Stay sharp, stay skeptical, and as always, keep watching The Throne. We'll be back with the next bombshell. Until then, stay dangerous.